So I'm going to be talking about. Hi, my name's Encore, and I'm going to be talking about voice agents and how we can build it, and then I'm going to go through a live coding example with you guys. Um, what is a voice agent? Why am I talking about it? What's so cool about a voice agent? Why are we trying to build it? A voice agent's just a way to talk to an AI chatbot voice to voice. So, like how I'm talking right now to this, except if I heard back from you as well, that would be the voice to voice. Uh, Now, what's the main difference between basic ChatGPT when you go on their website and text and talk to them? The major difference is it's all voice based. There's no text interface; it's just voice based. I mean, you can theoretically add a text based interface as well to make a text chatbot, but a voice agent is specifically one that's voice based. It's more natural communication, so when you're speaking, it comes out more naturally than when you type things out and try to make it a little bit more pristine, more written. There's always two different styles of speaking, and with text, there's one style, whereas in voice, there's another generally, so they don't necessarily overlap. And there's also a little bit of tonality that comes with voice. There's also and then lastly is where it compares to ChatGPT is that you can also do phone calls or web call capabilities. I know that ChatGPT has added their own number as well, which is also very cool. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. You can text it on WhatsApp or call it, I believe, as well. But again, that's a voice agent, and we can sort of build based on that for other use cases like recruiting, sales. So these are specific use cases that you can use it in. Like if you're doing recruiting calls, you need to do screening calls for those. Sales, doing those calls with cold calls with customers or something, an AI voice bot could sort of do that. Interviews, it can host interviews for you. That's kind of what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to be making an interview bot. And then any sort of IVR replacement where you call into a automated voice bot, and then they give you options of what menu items to select and how to reach an actual live agent. This can sort of maybe automate that, maybe expand on what those IVRs are capable of doing, and reduce the amount of work that a human would have to do. So here's the general architecture of how a voice agent works. A voice agent basically is a regular person talking to another person, kind of. The agent is another user. But let's say for this, so this is how it's sort of broken down, just in a call, whether it's a webRTC or phone call. In this scenario, we're doing webRTC. The user will talk, and then the agent will talk, and it'll be a cycle until the conversation's over. Specifically, the voice agent has a few parts to it. The ear, which transcribes the voice, which we call speech to text. Then the brain, which is the LLM, which sort of understands all the text that's been given to it and comes up with a response. And then the mouth, which is the synthesizer or the text to speech, which actually speaks the actual words. That's kind of how it's all built out. Let's just get into actually coding it now. So I have VS Code open. I'm just going to go to this place that I want to make it, and I'm going to make a directory, and we're going to call it live demo interview bot. And we're going to cd into that, and we're going to start coding in there. We'll close this window. So now we're in that, and let's just create the first file. We're going to need a requirements.txt. This is basically everything we're going to install. So we're going to need Pipecat AI, and this, I recommend adding it like this: Cartesia, daily. Well, actually, we won't need all of them. Let's just stick with daily for now, and we're going to need OpenAI and I believe Deepgram. These are the three that we're going to be using. So daily is our webRTC. So kind of back to this architecture here, we have the webRTC call. WebRTC is like Zoom, Google Meet, any sort of other thing that you might use for an online call. Those calls are, the one we're going to be using is daily. And then for the synthesizer and the transcriber, we're going to be using Deepgram. And then OpenAI is just a easy API to use for hosting models, for running any models. But realistically, we're actually going to be using Ollama. Here we're going to need loguru, python.env, and AIO HTTP. These are the ones that are going to be the bare minimum to get things running. Logguru is just for logging. This is just to get your virtual environment keys. AIO HTTP is how you run things like a fast socket, or so we can get into that if you'd like in another video, but these are the requirements that you need. And always great practice is creating a virtual environment. So I like to create a virtual environment using this. I always use .venv because if you create a proper get ignore, .venv is always part of the basic Python ones. So I like to make it .venv, and then we have to activate it. So we do source.venv/bin/activate, and we're now using that virtual environment, and we're going to pip install -r requirements.txt, and I believe we have an error here, and it might be related to this, so let's try it without that. Yep. So I know on the command line you sometimes need that when you're doing requirements.txt. It looks like it works without it. Now that it's all pip installed, let's get on to the next part. The next main part is your actual interview bot. So let's create the interview bot.py. So now we have an interview bot, and we're going to import a few different things. First, we're going to import async IO, import AIO HTTP. I'm not sure if and then we're going to import OS, import system. Then we're going to import a few different Pipecat stuff. So Pipecat, I don't know if I've explained, I probably haven't, so I'll go right into it right now. What is Pipecat? Pipecat is, sorry, let me just write this out actually. VAD analyzer and VAD params. Okay, so I don't think it could find Pipecat. It's probably because we need to make sure we're using the right Python. So let's make sure this is pulling from here. Perfect. All right, so Pipecat is the framework we're using for building out this whole agent that we've kind of outlined here. So the thing with the agent is it's a little bit more complex than just what I described here, because there's other things. What I was just showing you right now is a Celero VAD. That's something we're going to be importing in. Celero VAD is the name of a VAD. A VAD is a voice activity detector. What that does is, let's say I'm speaking right now. How do you know when I'm done speaking? Was it then? Or is it when I continue? Or is there a different point to the end of the sentence? When should I sentence-ize a sentence? Basically put a period at the end and know that it's the end of a sentence. When should a bot come in to interrupt me? All these little areas to understand, and that's sort of what a voice activity detector is for. We're using Celero for that. Anyways, Pipecat just pieces all of this together. This is a VAD plus all the transcriber, the LLM, the synthesizer, the pathway, making the latency as low as possible, making sure that you have access to all the messages that have been spoken and from both sides. All of that sort of information is sort of passed along here, and also connecting it to daily, the webRTC call. Okay, now we're going to be importing the frames. So there are a few frames that are important that we need to work with. So we're going to import the LLM messages frames. Frames are basically just frames that are sent from the webRTC call or from any other place frames could be sent along the pipeline. And then speaking of pipeline, we have the Pipecat pipeline. We need to import the pipeline itself. And then we have the pipeline runner. We have to import the runner. And from the tasks, we also need to create tasks for the pipeline to actually run. So those are parameters and the tasks themselves. My apologies for the cough. So then also we're going to be importing, like I said, Deepgram. Oh, sorry, services.deepgram. We're going to import both the text-to-speech and the speech-to-text. So the cool thing with Pipecat, or with Daily and Pipecat, specifically with Daily, is that it actually comes with Deepgram's preset up for your speech to text, which is your transcriber, which is like the ear. That already comes pre-installed, but I like to make a few changes to it. So to do that, I actually run my own. I run Deepgram hosted on Deepgram side, but using my own API key. It would be the same. The costs are passed along either way. Just was giving a heads up as to why I'm setting up my own and what we're doing here. And then we have here, we're going to set up the Ollama, which, like I mentioned earlier, is how we're going to run it through. Which is how we're going to run the LLM. And then we have, again, we're going to be, no, we don't need services anymore. I think we're in transports now, and we need the daily services. So, like I mentioned daily before, this is just how we run the webRTC call, and we just need to get a few specific things set up there. And finally, we have just a few more. We're getting all the LLM responses together. So those would be things like the LLM assistant response aggregator and the LLM user response aggregator. Just a way to get all the user responses and the LLM responses together. And then we're gonna set up Loguru for logging. We need the logger, sorry. And we should also get the .env file. All right, and that should be, I think, all of the import statements to start with. We might add a few more later if we need them. And then we're just going to make sure that we get all the API keys from the .env, regardless of what happened. And we're just going to remove all loggings and just get the logger started. So we're going to do it to standard error and just say we're setting the level to debug so that we can see any issues and see all logs that might be important. Now we're going to make the main method. And because this is where the AIO HTTP comes from, so because all of these are not running at the same time synchronously, we do need things to run asynchronously, and to do that, we do need things that can run as like a fast API, so you can run things locally, have WebSockets come in for different reasons, and one of those reasons would be a web call. So that's where AIO HTTP comes in, and we're going to be needing to set up a way to actually configure the session. So that's going to be something that's going to be our runner. We'll work on that in a bit. First, let's finish out the rest of this. And then we have the actual transport, which is going to be our daily transport. So like I said, this is how we're getting information from daily and how we're going to be sending it out. So we're going to use the room URL. We'll set it to the room URL. We're going to use the token and set it to the token. And then we'll name the bot. We'll name it, I guess we don't need to name these because it should just be in order. So let's name the bot. We'll call this the interview bot. And we'll give it parameters of, here's some things that would be important. So we do have a few daily parameters that would be important. We have the audio out enabled equals true. So this is so that the bot can actually speak. The audio in enabled, also true. Some of these are defaulted. I'm just going through a lot of these manually. Some are not necessary, but camera out enabled. For this case, we're going to set it to false just to make it easy, and we're just going to be focusing on a voice bot. Then you have transcription enabled. And we're going to set this to false. So like I said, we're not going to be using their Deepgram. We're going to use our own Deepgram. Then we're going to set up VAD enabled, and we do want this enabled because we do want some good voice activity detection. And we're going to use theirs, and we're going to use their VAD audio pass-through equals true. So we want the VAD to fully understand everything and get a little bit more information. And to give the exact VAD that we're looking to do, we're going to set up the Solero VAD with the params set to the VAD params and specific params that I like. So there's the stop seconds, the start seconds, and finally the confidence. So each of these are important, and I don't know why daily params is not showing properly, considering we do have it right here. Either I must have misspelled it. No. Very weird. Probably because we're missing a comma. Perfect. Okay. So let's go over these parameters. The stop seconds is basically how quickly the bot should, actually we can just go straight into it and look at it. It doesn't tell you. Okay. Well, that's great. So let's discuss it. So start seconds is stop and start seconds are basically how quickly the voice activity detector is able to detect when a voice has started, a voice has stopped speaking. So we're giving about 0.2 seconds of room on each side, and then the confidence interval of that it is actually a voice speaking is set to 0.4. So anything greater than 0.4 confidence will be considered as a speech. That's basically it. Then now we're going to be setting up each of the attributes for the actual voice agent. So like for example, the speech to text, which is the ear, and we're going to be setting the API key equal to the os.getEnv, and we're going to do Deepgram API key. We will be setting up these API keys shortly, and I'll show you how to do that. I'll even share my API keys with you because I will be deleting them very shortly after. And then we're going to set the language to US, English US. Just for now, you can change it as for whatever you need in a later scenario. And we're going to be using the Nova model. I think it's a great model, does a great job. Not really experienced a lot of issues with it. And then we're going to be setting up the TTS, which is the mouth. Again, we're going to be using Deepgram's TTS. And we'll just set the API key here again. All right. And last but not least, we'll be setting the LLM using Ollama. And for this, we'll use the model equals, we'll set it to Llama 3.1 or something, maybe 3.2. We'll see, depending on, well, we can change this later, but we'll set this for now. And we'll have basic empty messages for now. And we're going to set the aggregators for the LLM user and, for the user and the assistant. So for the user response aggregator, send in the messages. And same with TMA out. And this will be the assistant response aggregator. Cool. And then let's move forward and we will build out our actual pipeline. And this will be the pipeline that we follow. So we have, this is the flow that we'll follow right here. We'll have the transport.input, and then we'll have the ear. So the voice coming in, the ear hearing it. We're going to store those responses together. Then we're going to be sending all of that to the LLM, sending it back to a synthesizer or the mouth, then sending those out and storing all those values that it speaks. That's the basic pipeline, pretty straightforward. Now we'll have to actually make sure the pipeline is initiated by setting a task for the pipeline. So we'll set the pipeline as the pipeline. We'll make sure that there's specific parameters that we want. In this scenario, because we want it to be a little more natural, we want it to allow interruptions. We want to enable metrics. We want to enable usage metrics. And we also would want to report the time to first second or first byte. Just fun things to see for logging and stuff like that. Pretty basic and straightforward. I don't know why we're getting an error here. Let's try saving and see. I think we might have missed. Oh, I believe I know what the issue is. That should help. There we go. Now we're going to be creating some event handlers. So this is sort of how we know when to start the actual call and everything. First thing that we're going to do for that is just basically make a very basic event handler, which just works on the first participant joining, or in this case, joined. We're using a decorator to do that because that's how it works with Pipecat. That's how you add event handlers. And we're going to call this method on first participant joined. And we need these specific parameters passed along. I believe we are good. Perfect. Okay, and now we need the participant name. So this way so when someone joins, we can get their actual name and use it in the script. And then so participant name, then we're gonna need, so we're getting the participant name from the website, the webRTC call. So when you actually, when the participant joins, they put in their name, and either we'll get their username that they put in, or we'll get a blank name if they put in nothing, or we're not able to pull it for some weird reason. And then we're going to be using a system prompt. For now, we're going to leave it blank, but we'll also be setting up a system prompt with a constants later, so we'll leave that blank for now. And then we're going to be adding a few messages just to get the ball rolling. We can probably put this in the system prompt itself, but just to get it started, we can even just write it here so you kind of know. We can say the system is going to say something like, I don't know, let's say, or actually we can just say this is the system prompt, let's just put it directly into the messages because we need to append it. So the basic prompt will just be like hi for now, say hi. We'll change this later and we'll add in a proper system prompt later. And then we'll be adding in the response from the user so that we can get the ball rolling, where the user just says hello. Now we're kind of speaking for the user here. This is a way to just get the bot to speak first, a little trick. There are other ways, but this is just a way to make sure that the bot starts speaking first. Just a quick way. And then we're just going to queue these frames that we're going to say, hey, we want to queue the frame that a message has come in, and here are the messages that came in. So now this is going to go through that pipeline, and we're going to start the pipeline. Now we need to know what to do when the task ends. So first we need to start the actual pipeline, and we're going to run the task. And then once it ends, we need to close it out. But for now, since there's nothing really to close out because it's just a basic script, we'll just async IO. We'll just actually run it, and we don't have to actually close it out. And here we're just basically making it My apologies for being quiet for a second there. But here we're just running the main script if this interview bot is ever called. Now we still have a few errors. First, we have this configure, and second, we haven't set up our system prompt. So let's do that. Let's create the runner file first. So what is the runner file? The runner file is how we're going to actually create the daily call and add the assistant to it. So we're going to import a few different tools here just to write out the script. This is just how to get that started. Again, we're going to need AIOHTTP to make that web call. And last, we're going to need the helper to make the daily rest call. So this is how we actually this is the thing that'll help us set up the daily call. And here we're going to create the configure with an AIOHTTP session being an AIOHTTP client session, and we're going to be getting a lot of information, and what that is essentially my apologies. And we're just going to be configuring this, and all we need to return is the URL and token as we saw earlier. And so what is configure with args? Let's get that written out as well. So if you're curious why I'm making two separate ones, one that does using the AIOHTTP, does it just with configure, and one that does it with the args, it just makes it a little easier to, in case we need to add some other sort of arguments like a parser or anything else that might be necessary in a daily setup. This is how they recommend setting it up. So that's what we're doing here. Though, to be honest, for this use case, we probably could just run it using just the configure and just put it all in the configure. But we'll stick with what they recommend. And we'll have the parser be optional, and we'll have arg, because this is not something that we need, as we're not using it, and we'll just default it to none. Cool. And now we have it all formatted. I just saved it so it auto-format it. And then we're going to say if there's not a parser, then we're going to set the parser to be arg parse.argument parser with the description daily AI SDK bot sample. This is just like a sample bot that we're sample argument parser that we're building out. Otherwise, we'll have the and we're just going to add this argument to the parser that let's see, we're going to add this -u, which is the URL, which is the same, which would be required is false. Help URL of the daily room to join. Basically just saying that, hey, if we want to add in this argument of this is the URL we want, this is how you can do it, just using a -u. Pretty straightforward. Now we're going to add one other argument. Not sure why it's not happy with this parser. I guess it's fine. Again, we'll use -k for this one, which is another way is to say the API key. And this will be of type string. This will also not be required. And this is gonna say daily API key. And this is needed to create an owner token for the room, so that you can send that back and should be able to parser based stuff. So this is just when you're configuring and setting up your daily room, how you can do it using these these arguments. Like that's the reason we have to configure with arguments, a specific URL or a specific API key that we need to use. And now we're going to be taking in the parser dot parse known args. So this is essentially just parsing those arguments, and we are then going to take the URL. We're gonna get, or we can get the URL. If there was no URL parsed, and same with the API key. Then we're going to say if we don't have a URL, what kind of errors we could expect. Just no daily room specified. Use the -u or --URL option from the command line, or set daily sample room URL in your environment variables, I would say, maybe, to let's just say environment, to specify a daily room URL. Cool. And let's add a period. And that should be good for that exception. Oh, we don't need that extra space. And if not a key, same, we need to raise another exception. And this time we're going to say, oh, did not mean to run that. No daily API key specified. Use the -k -API key option from the command line, or set daily API key in your environment to specify a daily API key available from the daily dashboard. And it's just so if we have any issues, we can see where they're coming from. Now we have the REST helper, which is actually going to create the daily REST helper. Oopsie, this should be that, and we're gonna set it to daily REST helper equals that. And we should set some parameters for this. First, we need the API key, should be equal to key. We need the URL, should be equal to URL. And we need the AIO HTTP session, should be equal to the AIO HTTP session. Pretty straightforward, all done. Now we're gonna want an expiry time, just because there are bad actors. So we'll set that to about an hour. We can probably cut that down since we don't need a full hour just for this. We'll do it 5 minutes, just for a quick call. I don't expect anything over 5 minutes. And then we need the token, so let's make sure that we get the token from the URL, given the expiry time. And finally, we'll return the URL and the token and any args that might be needed to be passed on. and we should be pretty golden. Now we have the runner. So now that runner error should be still there because we haven't imported it. So let's import from runner, import configure. Now that error is gone. So now we should be able to make a basic voice agent that does this. Before we do any of that, we do need one other file, .env. So for that, we're going to need a few things. First, let's start with the daily API key. So we're already at 35 minutes, by the way, so this is quite a long one, but cool. All right, so we're going for the API key. So let's go to daily.co. We're going to go to the daily video. I've already logged in. I already have an account, but first you'd make an account. You'd end up on a page like this. You can go to developers. You'll get your API key. We'll copy key, clear the clipboard. So now we have this API key, and we'll call this daily API key, and we'll set that. Now we're also going to need the URL rooms, so that should be here. We can create a basic room. I think actually this should be the URL. Or is there a room number that we need? Let me think. It's been a while. Let's see, I believe. Let's just create a room. We'll use this room. And we'll call this interview. Okay. And we'll create the room. Create these room. And now we got an interview room. So we'll copy the link to clipboard. And we will now go back to VS Code, do the daily sample room URL. We got the interview room set up. So now we got an interview room. We got the API key all set and ready to go. Now we do need one other thing is we need to make sure that we have Deepgram enabled. So to get Deepgram, we should go to Deepgram. We're going to have to sign up. Since again, I already have an account, I'm just going to log in. Once you've set up, you'll end up on a page like this. You should have $200. I've used a little bit, not a lot, but we got that. Now we're going to create a new key. We're going to call this temporary, and we'll have this expire in 1 day. I'll copy this. Now we got the Deepgram API key. So now we have all the API keys we need to get ready and going. One last thing that I would do is just create a system prompt. So I like to keep all my system prompts and anything sort of that's a constant in a separate file. For that, I'm just going to copy something that I already have written out. Pretty basic, nothing crazy. It's just saying that this is a recruiter for an AI engineer position. The position will require working with RAG and some other stuff. And then I gave a list of questions to ask. I made sure that we can address the candidate name here. So that's the most important thing is I added a variable into the system prompt, which can be edited. So how do we make sure to do that in the actual code? So here we have our system prompt. Instead of just saying system prompt here, what we can do is we can first import the system prompt. Now, when we're writing our system prompt here, what we can do is we can do the system prompt dot format, and we can do name equals participant name. So now the name will be auto set every single time for the using the system prompt, no matter what name I put in, and we can get it started. So we have it all set up. Let's try running it. So how would we run it? Let's just try running the interview bot. And we'll see what happens. I might need to run Ollama, so let's run Ollama, making sure that that's running. Ollama is now up and running. And we have an error. We love that. Onyx runtime. Let's try running. I think we might need to install that, so let's add that as a requirement. ONNX runtime. Pip install -r requirements. So now we have Onyx runtime. And now we should have everything we need to get it all ready. No module named Deepgram. I misspelled Deepgram. Oh, my apologies. Let's install it again. And now we have an issue with optional. Cannot instantiate types optional. Let's go see where that error lies. Not here. So it's not happy with how we've set this optional. So let's go and see what we can do to fix that. Let's see what the issue is. Call expression not allowed in type expression. Huh. It might be because this is not meant to be setting it up, but more of an array here. So that was my bad. Yep, there we go. And now we should have fixed API key was misspelled. And now we have one more error. Failed to create meeting token. So it looks like we have an error with creating the URL. This might be because I've set a specific URL, but let's see. So now we have the daily sample room URL from the room environment. All right, let's do a little debugging. I'm just gonna put this on pause and be right back. All right, and so I'm back. So I added a get ignore file just so I could do some quick changes to see what was going on. Main change here is we're going to change the URL here to getting the specific URL. You can set this in your .env or you can set it here as the default. Basically, this is the URL that you can use to actually set up the daily REST API. It seems that the URL for the actual room is only really used, apologies, here. So let's try this. Looks like we're still running into an error. I thought we would have fixed that. And it looks like we're hitting an error in the pipeline. Method has no object previous. Let's try just running it one more time. Nope, looks like that error is still there. I'm going to take a little bit longer to debug this one more time. And so I was able to figure out where the issues lied. First, I changed up the requirements, just not necessarily important, just something I thought I'd share with you. I added in all the other extras. They're not necessary. Cartesia, 11 Labs, OpenAI, PlayHT, Celero, not necessary. I think Celero was already there, but the others are not necessary. I removed the Onyx runtime because it was unnecessary when I added in the other features. But I did make those changes. The other change I made was in the transport output, I made sure to have these parentheses. Did not realize I missed those. That was the main issue. I added this cancel task as we need to make sure to end the tasks once the participant has left. And I believe that was the major changes I made. Don't recall any other major change that I've really worked on. But now that we got that up and running, let's run the bot and see what it does. So we'll get a bunch of information on the screen and you'll see this link right here. Let's open it up. And let's give ourselves a name. Right now we're named Encore. That's my name, but let's call ourselves Billy. And let's test this out. Hello? Are you there? So as you can see, we're getting voice input, but it's not being sent to Ollama, or we're not getting fast enough responses from Ollama. Let's wait a little bit and see if Ollama will give us an output now. Testing.
Hello, I'm here. It looks like the voice input is being received by me, but there's an issue with forwarding it to Ollama or receiving timely responses from Ollama. I got your
Perfect.
message.
So as you can see, it's actually able to respond. There is just a delay because I'm using a pretty massive model, but otherwise it seems to be working pretty well.
It appears you're testing the connection and voice input functionality with a large model, Ollama. The initial uncertainty about responses from Ollama seems resolved, and it's now successfully providing an output. The delay might...
So I've left the call, and that causes the whole pipeline to end, and we're done. That is basically the coding. I did a bit of debugging on my own. I did add a git ignore file, which I mentioned earlier. This was just so I could do some quick comparisons between staged and changes I was making, but essentially I didn't want to add in all the extra .ven files, so I just copied a basic .git ignore for Python. You can get it from GitHub or anywhere, and then you can upload this to GitHub like your own personal project. If this helped, let me know. If not, please let me know where I could improve. Yeah.